Hi, I'll be looking now at paragraphs 13 to 17 in Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach's Versuch über die wahre Art, das Klavier zu spielen. And again, this will be more than one video. Der Triller über eine Note, welche etwas lang ist, sie mag hinauf oder heruntergehen, hat allezeit einen Nachschlag. Wenn nach der Note mit der Triller ein Sprung folgt, Figur 27a, so findet der Nachschlag auch statt. Wenn die Noten kurz sind, so leidet ihn eine darauffolgende steigende Sekunde allezeit eher B als eine fallende C. Da bei ganz langsamer Zeitmaß folgende Arten Noten D einen Nachschlag vertragen, ungeachtet die geschwinde Folge nach den Punkten die Stelle eines Nachschlags vertreten könnte, so sieht man hieraus, dass bloß eine fallende Sekunde diesem Nachschlage am meisten zuwider ist. Die Ausführung dieses Exempels D mit Nachschlägen werden wir im folgenden Paragraph bei Gelegenheit der punktierten Noten deutlich ersehen. Es ist indessen keine notwendige Schuldigkeit, bei diesen letzteren Exempel Nachschläge zu machen, wenn man nur den Triller gehörig aushält. So, Bach, first of all, Bach says, a trill over a note that is somewhat long, whether it may ascend or descend, always has a Nachschlag. And the Nachschlag, like I've said, I could translate it as afterstroke. And he's talking about the turn at the end of a trill. But I'm going to call it a Nachschlag. So a note which is somewhat long always has a Nachschlag. And here's figure 28. Bach is saying that when a leap follows a note with a trill, the Nachschlag will also take place in that circumstance. So that figure 27a, that C, the trill on the C will have a Nachschlag. And here's figure 27b. And so Bach is saying that when the notes are short, the trill with the Nachschlag rather tolerates or bears a directly ensuing ascending second. So here's the short note, the C, and what follows is the steigende Sekunde, the ascending second, so that would be the D. And so the trill with a Nachschlag works better here in figure B than in figure C. So the trill with the Nachschlag, the fallende Sekunde, the descending second. And I just want to point this out for something I'll be bringing up in a future video. The fallende Secunde, so the descending second, suffers the trill with a Nachschlag less than an ascending second, a steigende Secunde. So if you look at C, so when Bach says a directly ensuing fallende Secunde, well, what note is Bach talking about? Well, he's talking about the B. The directly ensuing fallende Secunde, or descending second, or falling second, is the B after the C. So what he's saying is, you know, a Nachschlag in the case of C doesn't work well. And here the words are very important. You know, it's very important to note each word, because if you don't pay attention to the words, you could think that's all, everything that Bach said up to that point is all the one thing, but it's not. They are separate pieces of the jigsaw. And so in that first sentence, Bach is talking about notes that are somewhat long, and they always have, trills on such notes always have a Nachschlag. Whereas when he talks about figure 27B and C, he is talking about when the notes are short. So if you go away from this thinking that trills, when a descending second follows the trill, then that trill doesn't have a Nachschlag, you'll be incorrect. And not paying attention to the words is mediocrity. And there you can see how a mediocrity attacks genius, how it wants to eradicate genius, because from then on, all your students, you yourself, will be going down the wrong avenue, and you'll be distorting the picture. It's a distorted picture what you're getting, because you've connected two pieces of jigsaw together that don't belong together. So it's important to pay attention to the words, and you don't have to, you know, notice every single word in the just hearing it once. You know, I'm not expecting that, and nobody can really do that. But what you can do is you can keep referring back, and then, you know, each time you'll notice the words again, and it'll refresh your memory, and you'll get a clearer picture of what it is Bach is saying. So I'll play B and C, and perhaps I'll play the figure 27C with a Nachschlag and without a Nachschlag, the trill with and without a Nachschlag, and perhaps you can hear maybe something that might make you tend to agree with Bach, with what he's saying. And so here's figure 27D. And Bach is saying, you know, at a very slow tempo, a Nachschlag will agree with such type of notes. And regardless that the swift continuation after the dot could take the place of a Nachschlag. And one sees from this that, you know, the descending second is it's just the descending second that is opposed to the Nachschlag. And so how can he say that in this example? Well, first of all, when you look at the example, you can see that Bach covers all scenarios. The first one is a steigende Secunde, or an ascending second, or a rising second, or a climbing second. So the G with the trill is going to the A. The next one is a leap, an ascending leap. So the G with the trill is going to a B. The last one is a descending leap, so the G is going to an E. So other than after the trill, the note itself being repeated, the only one that's left over is the descending second. So that's how Bach deduces from that, since the Nachschlag works for all those three groups of notes, if that's what you call them. Since that is the case, then one sees from this that it's just the descending second where this trill with a Nachschlag doesn't work. And how can you might think, who's Bach to say that? Well, what Bach is doing, he's telling you this. He is telling you that the trill with the Nachschlag at a very slow tempo works with these figures. And what you can do is you can try it for yourself, and you can agree or disagree with Bach. He is not saying you have to believe him, you have to swallow it, what he says with blind faith. You can try it, and you can listen and ask yourself, is it true what Bach says? Do these type of notes tolerate a trill with a Nachschlag? And if you look at that first group, the first beat of that bar, the G followed by the A and B, and the G with a trill in it, you can see that figure is the same as the figure in Mozart's, in K.3.30, that sonata in C major, that the opening trill has that exact same figure. So I was thinking I'd look at that opening trill in K.3.30 in connection with what Bach is talking about here, and that on the one hand we could get closer to figuring out what is the actual correct answer to how that trill is meant to be performed. And on the other hand, it can illustrate how one can use the information that we're reading here in one's practice, in one's interpretation, in how one, figures out the score and figures out what to do, what the correct answer is. How do I read the score? So, given that figure is exactly the same as the one over which that first trill is, that this would be a a good opportunity. And K3.30 is a bit of a puzzle, I think, for people. So I'll be doing that. So here's figure D with the Nachschläge, or the afterstrokes. So Bach says regarding this example that with Nachschlägen, with afterstrokes, that we'll clearly see in the next paragraph how these are to be performed. So trills with a trill with a Nachschlag over a dotted note, we're going to see clearly how it's performed. And here is how connecting the paragraphs together, the pieces of the jigsaw, help. Because what we have here and what happens so often with Bach is it's a kind of a synergy. That what we see in this example D is there's a dotted note, and following that dotted note is not one short note but two short notes. And so in providing an example with two short notes following the dot, you're going to see in the next paragraph that Bach explains how one trills with a Nachschlag on a dotted note that follows where one short note follows the dot. And so what he's doing in saying that means not only will you learn how to perform a trill with a Nachschlag where there's one short note following the dot, you will also know how to perform a trill with a Nachschlag where there's two short notes following the dot. So in the next paragraph, what Bach is telling you is more than the words he's using. And where he's not using this synergy, where where the total is equal to more than the sum of the parts, then the next paragraph would be twice as long, because he'd have to go through the same explanation for, dotted notes where two notes follow, or where three notes follow, or where four notes follow. And the following notes are the ones that kind of make up the time to the end of the beat that the dot began. So it finishes it off. The unit of a dotted note is the dot, and the whatever follows that fills the unit. And so that's what Bach is talking about. So the notes that fill the unit could be one, or in the case of the opening trill in K3.30, it's two notes that complete the unit. So with that, he's packing more information into, it's an economy of the words, and he might have been watching out for, cost of ink, paper. He self-published this book, so he might have had a mind that if he wrote too much, it would translate into higher costs and a more expensive book, a book that that'd be too expensive to buy, that'd be inaccessible. So he's packing. There is more information in the words he uses than the actual words themselves might on a surface surface reading that you think is contained. You can always read between the lines with what Bach says and get that extra information. Okay, that's all for today. I'll continue on in the next video. So, bye, and thanks for watching.